Welcome to Nasdaq Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq. Joining me is Steve Wagner, Global Managing Director, Decision Analytics at Experian, to discuss increasing consumer demands and expectations and how that could shift in a post-COVID-19 world. Steve, it's great to see you. Welcome back to Trade Talks.
Thank you. It's great to be here with you again.
With positive vaccine news on the horizon, we're starting to see it distributed through the population. What trends do you see for consumers when making purchasing decisions in 2021?
Yeah, well, I think the important thing that we've been testing in surveys that we've been doing over the course of the last 4 to 5 months has been to see the changes in behavior that are occurring and how they're being affected as the pandemic progresses. And one of the key findings that we've seen is that consumers seem to have made a very substantial and we believe durable shift to e-commerce and to online engagement. So historically, where what we've seen is about a 20% shift across consumers, and many of the businesses are reporting the same thing. But uniquely, in a number of areas, number of specific commercial areas like grocery, we're actually seeing the shift much higher at 60% and even above.
As we head back to normalcy in 2021 and a shift away from the overarching influence of COVID-19, are there any particular behaviors that will not continue into 2021?
So the reason I was just mentioning the behaviors that I did is because our belief is that these behaviors are highly durable. So I mentioned the grocery example because this is the classic behavior of people that don't want to go online to do certain classes of activities. And I think all of us know people like that. My mother has been one of them. She wouldn't shop online for a number of things. COVID has made a substantial change over a period of time that has caused people to find that they actually are more trusting of an online environment than sometimes they are of a physical environment. So our expectation is that those things will continue. So I certainly would expect to see, loosening up and more people getting out and doing things. But there's been a tipping point reached in terms of the durability of those trends and online engagement.
Certainly true. When I go to the supermarket, there's more people shopping for other people than themselves. There's actually people shopping for their own pantry. So that's really interesting. How do you believe we will see businesses adjust their models based on the e-commerce trends?
Yeah, well, that's a great one, because what we've seen in our surveys again is that consumers are incredibly impatient. Now, they've always been impatient. They're even more impatient now. So as they've done more work online, they're beginning to see the folks that are really good at that, the businesses that are great at it, and the ones that aren't so great at it. So what we've seen is 1 out of every 3 consumers now, right, will wait no more than 30 seconds before they drop a transaction if they don't like what's going on or if there's a delay. Right? That is a high degree of impatience. And I expect to see that kind of behavior continue. What that's driving is when, in our survey, what we started to see is that already about 25% of companies are beginning to spend and engage in upgrading their consumer journey experience. That's important.
Do you see consumers returning to a reluctance to provide data or a better understanding of how businesses can leverage data to provide an overall experience?
So I think the trend on this has also been fairly consistent and relatively persistent for some time. What we've observed, not just in the study that we're concluding now, but in a study we did last year, is that consumers are increasingly willing to give data if it really gives them a benefit in the process. So, for example, if they think that you will then know more about who they are, and therefore you'll have more information on what they've done in that online experience or in other similar online experiences, that's okay with them. They'll give information if they think it gives them more security. They'll give information if it makes them feel more comfortable in the transaction. And that's the trend that we've generally seen. And I know there's a broader trend as people have started realizing how much data is out there in the world, but very specifically from a fraud and identity standpoint, people are willing to give more data if it gets them an advantage, less friction in the transaction.
Contactless payments and digital transactions also exploded in 2020. Do you see the shifting?
I don't, but our studies haven't revealed any particular insights onto contactless. But if you extend out from what our studies are saying, I believe that that is an important part of the consumer journey that we have to, companies have to really continue to improve. In particular, it's continuous, frictionless, work in the background to understand who you're dealing with and how you do that in a way that gives the customer a great experience at the same time. Something that Experian works a lot with.
Any other trends you see in consumer behavior as we look further into 2021?
Well, let's hope they're spending behaviors and maybe some celebrating behaviors over time, but none others from my survey right now.
I co-sign that, Steve. Thanks so much for joining us on Trade Talks, and thanks for joining me. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq.
Thank you, Jill.